Hi, and welcome to Convergently Speaking. This week we have an interview with Betsy Garmon, who's a coach and all-around beautiful human. As you may have gathered, this is not Dan, this is Caitlin. I edit the podcast and am also Dan's wife. I quickly jumped in to do the intro for this podcast so that we could get it out as quick as possible. Dan and Betsy met through Personality Hacker, which is where Dan studied the Myers-Briggs system. Betsy is also a coach, and as she says in the interview, she's an artist, and she's been putting a lot of her work out in the world and has a whole lot of wisdom to share. Dan and Betsy are both INFJs in the Myers-Briggs system. They talk about that specifically and especially in light of the current pandemic that we're in. So there will be a lot of little pearls of wisdom for all of you INFJ listeners, but I know I got a lot out of it for myself, and I'm not an INFJ. There's a lot of wisdom in there for all of us as far as looking after ourselves and others in hard times, and especially in the hard times that we're in right now. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Convergently Speaking.
Okay, so hi Betsy.
Hello.
Welcome to Convergently Speaking. It's exciting to have you here. I know you've listened a few times, and I've really wanted to have you come along and for me to be able to pick your brain a little bit. So I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So we've known each other for a while, maybe 2 years, but we've never met in person, which I sometimes remember. And I'm like, have I really never met her in person? And it's like, no, it feels like we've met. Feels like I've known you for many years, but currently it's only virtual. So tell us something about what you do, and then I will kind of give a little bit of context for why I wanted to get you on, not just in general, but like why I think it's great to have a conversation right now.
Sure. I am a working artist and a coach. I kind of slip away from that life coach category because I think that it's a misunderstood category. So I say coach because I work with so many different people in so many different sorts of ways, but I'm a working artist, a coach, and I create a ton of content. Like that's one of the things I'm passionate about. And it's easy to do. It's easy to in this virtual world to write and create artistic content. And that just matches the way that I live. But my business card actually says soul cartographer, because I like for people to have to like do a little bit of digging. Like I love to dig, so I want people to do a little bit of digging too. But I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia, US, and we met because we were both, or actually you were gaining an MBTI certification, and that's the context that we met in.
So, through Personality Hacker, and you were one of the mentors, weren't you? Official mentors for the program.
And I think too, specifically, I think that you were in my assigned mentor group,
that's right. which wasn't very active.
That one wasn't very active, but then we kicked off an INFJ specific group, and I think that's where we really got to know each other and got to engage in some deeper conversation.
Well, that was a good segue. I don't know if that was intentional, but part of the thing here is that we're both INFJs in the Myers-Briggs system. Correct. And maybe worth adding that we're not the same Enneagram type.
Right.
So I'm an Enneagram 1 and you identify as a 4, yeah?
That's correct.
So without doing one of our very famous going off onto some other trail right now, we'll try and stay on track. But it's just for those that understand the two system, that's an interesting difference. And obviously we're both from different cultures, and you've got some, you're Mexican American, yeah?
Correct.
And
All
I've got a,
4 of my grandparents were from Mexico. Yeah.
all 4. Okay. Yeah, there you go. So there's a whole heap of things, but from the Myers-Briggs perspective, we've got this. I always think of Dario Nardi, who scans brains to try and understand what's happening for people's brains, and at a fundamental level, if your brain and my brain were to be scanned, there'd be some factual similarities of how the mechanisms work. Now, how we apply those mechanisms is obviously different. But that's why I wanted to do this now, because I think with what's going on, and now I'm doing the introverted intuition where I look off to the side. So I'm not used to the video thing. For those that are watching that don't know, that's a telltale sign of introverted intuition for an INFJ.
I've been on video enough that I try to control it, but I just can't. There's a pause.
Yes.
And a
yes.
I can feel myself accessing up, and I just cannot move any more quickly than that gap, that need to reach for the language.
Yes.
It's just there.
I can
It's
operate without doing it, but it just undermines the quality of my thought and ultimately my articulation of those thoughts. But yeah, so what I was saying is that with the tumultuous times we're in, with the economic impacts and the health impacts of this virus situation, there is specific challenges and issues that INFJs face. And Joel Mark Witt, who, along with Antonia, as we know, run Personality Hacker, and he posted on Twitter a really validating, a few thoughts and a few comments about the fact that, I can't remember how he said it, but I can't imagine what all the INFJs must be going through because of their tendency to absorb the emotional energy and the climate that is around them. And I found that really validating and affirming. And there was about 80 comments below when I saw the tweet.
Oh, wow.
So I got some attention, and I said, thanks for posting. And I thought, thank you. But this is also only half the story, because extroverted feeling, which is where an INFJ is absorbing the emotions, is only the second part of the cognitive functions for an INFJ in Myers-Briggs. And the first one is obviously introverted intuition. And introverted intuition is all about, well, it's all about quite a few things, but one part it's about is future casting and forecasting, and trying to get the pattern together to see where we're heading. And so when the whole society, as is currently going on, doesn't really know where it's heading, well, that's anxiety provoking, and it's confusing, and it can be overwhelming and all that kind of thing. So yes, personally, I'm absorbing the anxiety of the broader society. But if I'm not careful, I also generate my own anxiety by wanting to future project, but really not being able to the quality I would like. So you and I had a couple of messages, and I just said, let's chat about this on video, because I was really intrigued by how you've been navigating this time whilst being the person that you are. What's your experience of that stuff?
Well, it's interesting in the conversation that you and I had, that sort of quick exchange that we had. You mentioned some of these things, and there was a a tension piece that you were experiencing, that I was like, oh, I'm leaning into this.
Yes.
Like, I love this.
Yeah.
I'm not being offended by this right now. And I think for me, there's just this surrender to what I can't control and what I can't know. Now, I think this is the point where we need to say, I'm probably 25 years older than you are. So
yeah. So, well, no, 20.
Okay, 20.
I did the
So
maths
there's
before when you said your age, and I was like, oh, it's 20 years. Yeah.
okay. So I think maybe let's just say that comes into the picture a little bit.
Sure.
There's also this place where I think that I've just it's like I understand and admit and embrace that as the data is flying in the way that it's flying in, I am just not ever going to be satisfied. And I'm not going to be able to prove what I want to prove, understand what I want to understand. There's no way that I can vet all the experts, and I'm using air quotes, right? Yes. But I can't. I mean, I can't go to Germany and like look up information on this guy. And I mean, here's this beautiful, there was a piece that came out today from this, wonderful doctor in Chicago. And I'm thinking, oh, I resonate with her. Thank you. That was reassuring and valid. But I mean, I know there are people out there that are going, that's conspiracy theory. So there's just no way to vet data when it's coming at you and it's virtual.
Yes.
So I can't go look that up in a book or interview a real human, right? We're talking.
Yes.
So back in the day, I homeschooled all of my kids. And so one of my things that was really important to me was textbooks are in general tertiary documents. So one of the things that we would do is when we were looking at a textbook, it's like, okay, where did this come from? Can we get back to the original document?
Yes.
Well, when you're talking about a massive influx of virtual data, like, how do you get to the original source, and how do you vet all of this?
Yes.
And then, as you're saying, there's also this like intuitive piece that's going, I say no to you, you feel right.
Yeah.
So then there's that piece too.
And it will use the data that it has.
Correct.
So
right.
If it's not the original data, it doesn't matter. It will still pattern recognize with the data that it has. Now I'm sounding like you. We say data here.
Data, that's funny.
Data.
Yeah.
But yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go on.
No worries. I mean, I just thought it was really interesting that you were like, I love it. You were guarding your process very carefully, because I think that it's a term that Antonia used one time. She was at my house and we ended up in this conversation, and she used the term fussy TI. So that's introverted thinking, and it in the Myers-Briggs system, introverted thinking for an INFJ is in the tertiary position, and which we've got a bunch of different models around that and language around that, but it's not our top cognitive function. And she and I were in this conversation, and she just smiled and she went, oh, look, I forget how fussy TI can be in that position, how our nickname for it is accuracy.
Yes.
And it was like, it was such a great label for me because I can catch myself doing it. It is like a pre-adolescent trying to prove themselves to adults.
Yes.
And so that's what we need to be doing right now. We need to be vetting the data. Like, how am I going to be in a conversation with my adult children if I haven't vetted this data? And I think there's just this surrender and dissolving of ego and recognition that this is just going to be a complicated piece for me. And how can I shift into my arena of just flow and genius and strength, at the same time honoring what it is that I need as a whole person. So you were like, oh man, I'm just like experiencing all of this tension. And I'm like, man, I love that part, that what we call introverted loop.
Yes.
of trying to future cast and take in the data, and trying to future cast and take in the data. And I think it's this incredibly like just crunchy experience for a lot of people. It's painful. Like, how do I figure this out? I don't have a sturdy way to vet data, but I'm trying to future cast without. Okay, well, the answer is you go out into the real world and you do your damn best to get real-time information.
Yeah, and my comment, well, I don't know what my comment was, but what I was speaking from, and the not just cognitive realization, but also visceral embodied realization to another degree is, I mean, this is not new, but it's just another degree, is the cognitive loop. I mean, I can enjoy it too. And it can be, I mean, it can be brilliant. It can be really productive. I've solved some issues in my life that I think a lot of people would just put up with and not solve, because I just kept going introverted intuition, introverted thinking, and around till I got to the bottom of it. But my lived experience of contentment and happiness and joy, if I run that software too long, it gets undermined. And, just realizing time and time again that if I go out and see a friend and have a coffee or a meal and smile and laugh, or if I play with the kids for half an hour, or I extroverted feeling out in the real world, connecting with real humans, my whole experience of life and the present moment can shift and change. Doesn't mean to say the introvert, doesn't mean to say the loop can't be used and continue, but I recenter, I find my equilibrium, and then I can go back to that with a fresh, and the way I was realizing is if I overdo it and I don't balance it out, I start to catastrophize. And listening to Objective Personality, some content from them a couple of days ago, he was talking about how those with introverted intuition first, so INFJ, INTJ, and he's an INTJ, everyone wants to be an INFJ and it's so much fun and all this unless you're actually one and realize how challenging it is to have your sensory function, for us it's extroverted sensing, fourth. So, he's really speaking to the fact that, we might be living days, weeks, months, or sometimes even 10 years into the future. So he was talking about the example of, someone who wants to create an app. He's like, you're trying to create this app. You think it's going to be brilliant. You think it's going to change the world, but you haven't done the extroverted sensing in the world that currently exists research to discover that, hey, this app already exists. It's already on the market. This need is already met. And he said it's just he says like this constant thing that if we overdo introverted intuition, we then underdo extroverted sensing, and we're not just getting the actual information that we need. And so I think it's the introverted intuition that we need, when the loop's happening to try and get cleaner data. But also we need, I don't know how you would put it into words, but we need the extroverted sensing. It's almost like the kinesthetic data.
Yeah, I think there's this, there's actually a really lovely opposite loop. Right? So I think that there's actually another loop that exists between extroverted feeling, or what we call harmony in the system that you and I learned, and extroverted sensing. And what it's asking us to do is go out in the world and get like real information. And so you mentioned that there are two types in the 16 types of MBTI that lead with introverted intuition. So there are INTJs and INFJs. So there's a feeler version of that, and there's a thinker version of that. And I think that when the thinker version goes out into the world, they don't get so turned upside down. And I think that's why there are so many memes and like subgroups for INFJs, because we have this profound, almost prophetic knowing. It's mystical and magical. It's because we're constantly running this intuition. It's constantly running, and we have to go out in the world. Well, I think thinkers can go out into the world and not have their entire, we are entire units of mind and heart, emotion, intuition, and body. It's in this physical container. And I have said to people, it's like sometimes it's painful to walk out my front door. Like, what's that? What does that mean? Like physically painful? And it's like, no, I just find myself feeling like some sort of animal without an exoskeleton.
Yeah.
Right? Or like my nervous system is on the outside of my body, because you go out there and you are just so hardwired to the collective. Right? So the lady at the grocery store, or like my perspectives is future casting, like you said, not only
introverted intuition perspectives. Yeah.
Right. Introverted intuition. It's like, not only am I listening to the data about, what's happening right now in our world, is that there's this pandemic that is happening. And so there's the physical implications, but when you're a future caster, you're future casting the economic manifestation, and also, so let's just say
can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Because
yes,
I mean, that's at a personal level, that's something I've wrestled with. To me, it seems, and I'm not an economist, and I'm so far from an economist, it's not funny. But to me, I've found the lived experience of existing in my life and the people I know, and on social media and all that, with people that don't seem to be seeing the economic impacts that are coming down the line, and going, well, this is intuition, isn't it? It's like, I know what happened in the financial crisis in 2008, and people are talking about this pandemic, but what about, and that's something I've really struggled to make head and tail of. I'm not making, I forget the exact point I was trying to make, but it makes my lived experience trickier, because if I'm trying to communicate to I was talking to my wife about this, and I was saying, like, I probably need to list some more concrete and specific outcomes that will come from economic disruption. You just use the words recession, especially with someone who's younger. I did at work, someone who's 24, and it doesn't mean anything to them. It's so abstract. Recession as a concept is abstract. So anyway, this speaks to the point of future forecasting, and then struggling to live when you can see.
So I think it's important. I think it's important to point out that when you're future casting, you're not future casting with numbers in a spreadsheet. You're future casting with humans.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I think that's the differential.
Yes.
So you walk into the grocery store and you are, which I did. We made a big run at the end of last week. So we've been hunkered down, of course, because both my husband and I have introverted intuition in our front seat. So we weren't pushing back at the fact that this was coming. Like we had both perceived that it was coming.
Sure.
But I'm thinking of the cashier as I'm going through. It's like, how long are you going to be here? What is going to be going on? If I'm not careful, I'm pushing my cart through the grocery, and it's like, my brain will do that with every single human and every single item on the grocery store shelf. Like, is that going to be here? Wait, where's that manufactured? What's happening to supply chain? So this is where now I've got fussy data in the back seat. My brain's trying to make sense of it. And then in real time, my empathy is activated. So I think that's what Joel was speaking to. Like he understands that this is how we're wired. And that's what I mean when I say it's painful. It's painful for me to go to the grocery because I've got so many of my systems activated. And so then I go home and I'm exhausted. Why am I exhausted? I'm exhausted because I've been like spinning, thinking, dot connecting, wondering, trying to make sense of it all, and also looking at these humans and truly like feeling connected to them energetically. And then let's just talk about how I feel about flowers and the earth and animals that are displaced by construction happening in my neighborhood, right? All of it, and it becomes this package. And so then you see why INFJs just want to stay home.
Yeah. So that's the problem. What do you do about it? How do you navigate it? How do you manage it?
Well, I think one of the places that you and I
challenge, I should say. I don't know if I call it a problem. It's a challenge.
I don't know if it's a problem. I think that really amazing, powerful things happen for INFJs if we attend to that other opposite loop. And remember, we have a body, and that we actually are part of the collective. So when we go out into the world, instead of just going, oh, I feel empathy for you, and what is going to happen in your story, and are your children going to be okay, and are you going to have a job? because you're in retail or restaurants are closing and we're all in this together. And also I have a body, and if I tend to that piece too and remember all the parts of myself, then that's where I think we really come together, we don't fracture, and we make these really profound offerings to the world.
So I understand what you're saying, but I wonder if there's a jump there that some people might not understand. And that's you've got the empathy for the people, but you got to remember you have a body. So remembering you have a body, you said not being fractured. So my paraphrase or my experience of that is to engage all of the parts of my personality. And although it can seem counterproductive, because it's like, well, why shouldn't you have empathy? And why is engaging all the parts of yourself going to help with that? It's equilibrium, I find. So if I go ride my electric skateboard, which is extroverted sensing, and my lived experience now is knowing that a mate of mine over in Canada had to lay off 26 of his employees. And I'm aware of that. It lives with me. I feel empathy for him. And if I had I haven't had a particular moment where I was just down in the dumps because of that. But if I had a moment when I was particularly sad or triggered by that fact, because he's an old friend and all this, to operate in a non-fractured way, to use your language, and to ride my skateboard or to do something that gets me into my body, like meditation or my sauna, all of a sudden changes my lived experience of that. And it's not that I don't all of a sudden care, but the narrow-sightedness and the potential to get overwhelmed is straight away decreased. Is that, because that's me, is that similar for you?
No, that's it, man. You nailed it. It is recognizing that there is that very practical, concrete manifestation of all the thoughts and feelings. And so we're so full of all the thoughts and feelings, and the answer for INFJs is always breath and always presence. We have so much going on, and our genius lives in all of these like sort of ethereal, magical spaces, and we love to be there. But when we make our most profound offerings, and when we are the most aware and capable of offering our genius, is when we sink into the thing that happens when we weave all the parts of ourselves together and don't allow ourselves to be separate from our body. Because isn't that silly? I mean, this is this container that we have, and it's like we're constantly trying to sort and classify our feelings and our emotions. And, we love to have these conversations about theory and theoretical things of all of the topics that we're passionate about. So there's that. And then there's also like, what do you think about this? And how do you feel about what you think? And what do you think about how you feel? And we love that like you and I, we talked about that. Like, how are we going to focus ourselves? Because between the two of us, we would always, or could easily, have a conversation amongst ourselves between theory, ideation, thoughts, and all of our feelings about said theories, ideation, and thoughts, right? We could move back and forth between those two things very easily, and have done, some of those mentoring conversations and some of those INFJ groups. We would like look up and go, 3.5 hours just passed.
Yeah.
Because all of us were sort of disconnected from how uncomfortable it can be to sit in this chair. Right. So that's why I think it's so important to drop into our bodies and tend to present and like be present with concrete things that can be done. And what happens when you go out into the world and actually vet your data or vet your what's speculations, I'll call them.
Yes. So what tools have you personally been using? Or, I mean, I ask in general, what do you use? But now at the moment, because this is a unique situation, you go to the shops and that's exhausting, and we understand why. But what do you do about it? Before, after, just on a day-to-day basis? I mean, one example for me, and then I'll let you answer, but one example for me that was enormously profound was I woke up about a week ago. I woke up on, I think it was Saturday morning, and I had a very little look on Facebook, and it was just pandemic mixed with panic. And I just, within about 30 seconds, I went from I'm checking Facebook to Facebook's coming off my phone. And it was done. And I barely touched Facebook for 3 days. And I just looked on my computer a little, but, it wasn't on my phone. And it was fantastic. And I just knew it was like my inner knowing knew. It's like, I can't feed myself even more data. That's just gonna... So that was a real tangible, extroverted sensing thing that I did that might seem tiny. But that was probably removed like 40% stress. Because I turned off the tap. From what was really high emotion and most of the time low quality data. It's like I need higher quality data and lower emotion at this time. So that's one thing I did. But yeah, what about yourself?
Wow. I have a personal bias toward
I know what's
journaling.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I really believe that everyone would benefit from whatever specific model of journaling would work for them. So there are a lot of different types of journaling that exist. It's very interesting. I did a market research project last year on journaling because a huge body of my work is found in journaling practice. I teach journaling as a spiritual practice and for personal growth. So it's a huge part of what I believe in and what I teach. And so I did some marketing research, and I found that there are a lot of things that fall into the category of journaling, and I wanted to understand, because if you start doing a little bit of research, you will find that therapists ask you to journal. If you look into any kind of anyone who is worth their, I just lost the phrase.
Weight in gold? No.
Weight in gold is maybe that's where I was going, but there's something with salt.
Worth their. I think it's worth their salt.
Worth their salt? Is that it? Maybe. Yeah. Anyway, the phrase just left. Yeah. But productivity experts almost always ask you to journal.
Yes.
And, you know, as coaches, we're constantly asking our clients to journal. And I was like, are we all talking about the same thing? So that's probably a conversation for another day, but there are many manifestations of that. But I do believe that there are some specific ways that you can journal and really tend to that part of you that needs concrete expression. You can also tend to that part of you that needs to grow some emotional agility.
Yep.
That can happen in the pages of a journal. You can grow the capacity to observe yourself, which is a huge component of self-awareness. So all of these things can happen in the pages of a journal. There are verbal exercises, nonverbal exercises, so that you're accessing both parts of your brain. Everybody has both parts of their brain. It's a ridiculous piece of information that went out maybe 25, 30 years ago that people are left-brained or right-brained. Sure. That is not true.
Yeah.
Everybody is using both parts of their brain all the time. Thinkers are feelers, feelers are thinkers. You and I would not be having the conversation that we were having if we weren't both accessing both sides of our brain this entire interview.
Yeah.
So there are some really beautiful ways to tend to your heart, what we call in the West our heart, which we mean our emotions and our feelings, and also your thoughts and sorting out what's going on in your mind, and also your body. So I think it's important to differentiate between worry and anxiety. Worry is your thoughts spinning about. Anxiety actually lives in your body. And so I use my journal for all three aspects of who I am: heart, mind, and body, because there's some like active kinds of ways that you can interface. So that was me getting on my soapbox about journaling, but I think journaling is incredibly important.
Yeah, and we'll link to your resource.
Sure.
So people, that's one rabbit hole that if they want to follow,
there's a ton there. But in my own personal life, like I have to move every day.
Yep.
And I actually work from home, and I joke about living a no pants lifestyle. And what I mean by that is I put on workout clothes at the beginning of the day, unless I'm going to some sort of in-person meeting or coaching like this. True story. A lot of times I look like this for my coaching clients, but I'm still wearing yoga pants.
Yeah.
And that's my own personal commitment to stay in motion. Because moving is so important. And, you know, we're living in this way that humans were never meant to live. We were not meant to sit at a desk. We were not meant to be sitting down. We were not meant to be sitting down the way that we sit down. So it's incredibly important to be up. So I'll like do a session and then I'll get up and I'll do a series of sun salutations or like one of my little workouts, or I'll just go take a walk.
Yep. And so that's catering to the extroverted sensing. I mean, amongst other things, but that's an extroverted sensing thing. So just to contextualize your example where it fits for the INFJ.
Absolutely. I think that making sure that you are tending to your body is incredibly important to make sure that you can engage with humanity, that you can manage all of the thinking and future casting. It's all living in this container. And it's so easy for us to sort of depart from this container and go do the thing that we love to do, which is theorize.
So how do you then use, because let's say that's nurturing the extroverted sensing, and if we're trying to be I can't remember the language you use, but like integrated is the word I'm going to use, with all four parts, all four cognitive functions. How do you personally nurture the extroverted feeling part of you if you're wanting to be balanced and not just doing the internal, the thinking? You might exercise for the extroverted sensing. Now, is that coaching, feeling like it's nurturing the extroverted feeling part of you? And do you do other intentional things?
I think the most important thing that I do for my extroverted feeling is that I'm constantly checking in with my own personal boundaries.
Okay.
So I don't have any trouble finding people who want coaching or engaging with people like that. I think extroverted feeling left to its own devices will just go out into the world and become reactive.
Yes. Yeah. So it's less, not more for you. You exist in a system when there's already enough humans. You're not lacking for that connection. It's about
right.
having
Especially
boundaries to have quality connections.
Absolutely. You get to be my age, and I birthed 5 children. My husband and I have been in multiple environments where we've been invited to lead. So I'm not hurting for humans to engage with. And I think that when you live your life well, that's just an opportunity that's available to you. And it's not really a numbers game, because I'm making it sound like it's a numbers game. It's not a numbers game. Whatever social construct you're in, if you have extroverted feeling in your makeup, then you are going to have an opportunity to be reactive to the other humans. And I think the way that I tend to my extroverted feeling is to be sure that I have enough margin to actually make an offering properly.
Such
so
a
that I'm
profound
making
point.
offerings out of overflow.
Yes.
And not just going, it's infinity, right? The needs are infinity.
Yes. No, it's such a profound point, and it's the reason that I want to charge a good amount of money for coaching, because I have 3 kids and I'm the sole income earner. Right. And if I am working for too low an hourly rate, I'm not going to be offering my best. And so, I do coaching, but I also have my paid daytime job. Now, if I did my day job full-time, 40 hours a week, yes, I could live on that. But my capacity to do that and then offer quality coaching, quality stuff, my offerings would be impeded. And that is me. And that's something I've had to come to terms with. There are people that could do 40 hours a week and still do a 15 to 20 hour a week hobby business as high quality, good output, the whole bit. And especially for the extroverts who can do more things in the outside world. whereas I would rather do 20 paid hours for more strategic, high quality offerings, and then spend, 10 or 15 hours doing the journaling, doing the meditation. My answer to my question to you about extroverted feeling is going to see a friend who is, there's no pretense, and it's just a good, and getting good food and good drink and losing those 2 or 3 hours, that's my happy place. If I've got good conversation, so that's my introverted intuition, that's my extroverted feeling, that's my introverted thinking, and I've got good food and drink, my extroverted sensing, the little kid in the back of the car is entertained, that's enormously rejuvenating. And I can do the same with my wife, chatting and connecting and all that. So the margins thing is something that I'm constantly wrestling with. And this is probably more relevant to someone of my age, someone with kids who's an INFJ. It's how do you earn enough money to give your family and yourself a reasonable standard of living, a good enough life, and still be authentic and genuine and healthy and that kind of thing, because I can't and I don't want to do a 12-hour day and then come see the kids. And first, I couldn't do it. I'd be too worn out. But secondly, I need to be present. That's probably the extroverted feeling. It's like I want to actually spend actual time with those people. So what you say about boundaries is so, and I would say when you get to my age, you realize once you start having kids, or even just getting into a committed relationship, you start to go, nah, I can't have these low quality, toxic or draining people. It doesn't mean I don't want to help people that aren't. I can't have people in my life that have needs, but there needs to be a give and take.
So here's something that I think is important to acknowledge, that those draining sort of people don't reach out to just anybody. They reach out to the people who are going to meet whatever need it is they have. And this is not limited to INFJs, but I think INFJs have a lot to offer in those one-to-one exchanges. When there's someone who is experiencing some sort of pain point or gap or need for affirmation, or even, practical felt needs, like whatever. I think that those people, if you've got a either physical need or emotional need, you're going to seek out who can meet that need. And INFJs are often really good at meeting those needs. What INFJs have to also be good at is making sure that their well has water.
Yes.
That's my word picture that I use.
Yes.
So if somebody is coming in my direction and they've got an empty bucket and they want to drop their empty bucket down into my well of wisdom and resource, and let's just even good listening skills.
Yes.
Whatever it is that they're seeking, they want to drop that that bucket down into my well. I have to ask, am I connected to a spring?
Yes.
Right?
That's right.
And is there water in this well? And does my family, is there enough in here for me to make an offering to this person and make an offering to my family?
Yes.
And I do think that there's this really beautiful, really expansive opposite of scarcity mentality, abundance mentality of, if I'm connected to a spring, there is this really amazing capacity for me to give. But it really means that I have to be connected to that spring.
Yes, that's right.
And for me, that is journaling, yoga, getting out in nature. I walk outside barefoot every day. It's part of my morning practice because it reminds me I have a body.
Yes.
Now, not everybody's going to need the same level of reminding that they have a body that I do, but I have this propensity to just be lost in I call them thought feels, because I think that our thoughts and our feelings are so intimately connected.
Yes.
And I can just kind of get caught up in my thought feels.
Yeah. It's
and
addictive.
Forget that my thought feels live in my body.
Yeah, and it's addictive. Like I think that's the point that I've realized and that I want to make here is that the introverted loop, the cognitive loop, isn't negative, but it's addictive. And then once we overdo it, like anything, too much of a good thing can become well, not a bad thing, but too much of a good thing can become harmful. So I'm the same. I mean, that's why I got into riding an electric skateboard at, what was I, 34 years of age. I haven't ridden a skateboard since I was in high school. And it cost me some money that I thought, oh, should I be spending this on the family? But it's like, no, if I'm in connection with my body and I'm healthier and all these kinds of things, then as you say, there's water in the well. So I'm tracking with you, and I love that analogy, the water in the well. So
I think another thing that can happen that's really contextual to these unprecedented times of massive data and tremendous anxiety is that when you are in that world of thought feels, and what's coming at you is it's imperative to isolate. You are actually in physical danger, like literal life and death, not just me saying life and death as a turn of phrase.
Sure.
Like literal life and death. Then it's really easy to spin out.
Yes.
With both your emotional house and your thought life. So it becomes really important to tend to your body, because anxiety lives in your body.
Yes.
And it's general. Anxiety tends to be sort of general. Like there are unknowns. We don't know what's going on. Like, oh, my tummy hurts and I don't really know why.
Yeah.
Worry tends to be like what I did this morning. I was worried I was going to oversleep.
Yeah.
And I was a little worried about today because I didn't know exactly what was coming. Right.
Yeah.
But it had specificity to it.
Yeah.
So there's some ways that we can handle worry. Again, I'm going to go to the journal thing, right?
All right.
Like there's some exercises that we can do that really help us offload worry, turn it upside down, find solutions, figure out what we're in control of, figure out where we actually have some power.
Yes.
Right? As opposed to anxiety, which tends to be more generalized. And really that just means, tend to your body.
Yeah.
Like it's energy. It's all energy, right? Yeah. And I think anxiety is sort of a trapped energy.
Trapped energy. Yeah. And I'd say tend to your body and to the real world in general.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be yoga.
Yeah, we're getting all of these energetic, like that's one of the reasons I think now we're getting into woo-woo land, but I'm super comfortable with that. But when I'm pushing my cart through the grocery store, I'm picking up this energetic output
Yes.
from humans. But this is one of the ways that this sort of thought pattern that INFJs have. You're also looking at a bag of coffee, and then you're going, coffee? I wonder what's going on in South America. Oh my goodness. Like, are they okay down there?
Yeah.
And who's growing my coffee? Who's picking my coffee? Are they okay? What about supply chain? And all these thoughts are, and it's like, I mean, I see it, my husband's going, it's a bag of coffee. And I'm like, I want to cry right now. I just have to get out of here. Right. Yeah. So you have to, I have had to learn how to manage that. Right. That is called emotional agility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it means recognizing that it's going on and then gaining some perspective. And a lot of times if we don't manage it in real time, it gets stuck in our body.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we have headaches or tight shoulders or like gut issues.
Yeah. And this is what we see with, you can go on Twitter and you look up INFJ and you get all this INFJ problems and INFJ, all the negatives or the challenges or and definitely the victim. I'm a victim of being an INFJ, and it's because there are so many complexities around that stuff that ends up meaning we store these things in our bodies if we don't deal with them and work them through in real time. And so that's why I and many, it's not only INFJs, but it's people in that kind of area within Myers-Briggs end up training and learning about trauma and how do you move trauma out of the body. Like I've done the introductory training for TRE, tension and trauma release exercises, which is literally a simple process for triggering the body to release energetically. This is woo-woo stuff again, but it's the nervous system discharging that stored energy. It's not stuff that, and I mean, I'm trained as a counselor and I do coaching. I'm an advocate for talk therapy, but it's not talk therapy. You can't talk out the trauma like you can. I mean, there's a place for the talk, but there's stuff that's in the body that can't be talked out. It's got to be physiologically released.
Yes. The somatic pieces are so important for INFJs. And I mean, so since we've entered woo-woo land, here's another little thing to put on your plate. I really love working with the elements. So earth, water, fire, air. I think if you think about those things and the practicalities of them, there's a lot to do there. And it's another arena that you can ground yourself in. So earth. I walk outside and I put my feet on the earth. I take walks and I usually have my camera or I'm making small notations. So almost daily, I make what I call noticing lists. And I move through my 5 senses. And I'm like, what do I see? What do I smell? What do I hear? And those what tactily is happening in my world. Those observations do a couple of things. They bring me into my body, but they also ignite gratitude. And gratitude, we know, literally changes our brain. There are some studies that have shown that it affects inflammation. It reduces inflammation. A gratitude list of observing 3 things that you're grateful for every day for 21 days straight in a row. It changes your physiology. So these kinds of somatic practices matter. They matter. So that's earth, water, literally drinking water.
Yeah.
Right? Drinking water, washing our hands, immersing in water. I have some rituals around water because it's important to me. So in between clients, in between activities, I wash my hands and I wash my face. So a lot of times I don't have makeup on because I have like engaged in some ritual cleansing in between pieces of my day. Right? It just helps me shift from one place to another. And also, I think it's discharging some of that energy, as you were talking about. Fire, oh man, love me some fire. Candles behind me. It's Sunday. I have rituals on Sunday for reflection. I light candles when I enter my space. So I blow them out when I leave. At the full moon, and there's nothing woo-woo about the full moon. It's just that it reminds me the full moon happens.
Yes.
So it reminds me. And, there's a beautiful book called Atomic Habits. So I think everybody should read it. I think anybody who's a J or a judger in the Myers-Briggs system will really appreciate it. But
it's about this kind of stuff you're discussing?
It's not about the
fire.
It's about habits and ritual.
I see.
And something that's really powerful. If you want to incorporate a habit into your life, you hook it on something that's already there.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, the moon is there on a regular basis. Yes. So I have several things in my life that are attached to the lunar cycle because the lunar cycle is consistent and there.
Yes.
So at the full moon, I do my forgiveness work. And if I need to write something down or get rid of something and burn it, I keep a burn box in my art studio and we build a fire in the backyard and I burn it. It's just this physical engagement that helps me with all the thoughts and the feelings.
Yes.
And then breath work. I am very serious about the fact that presence and breath work, for everyone, but INFJs, presence and breath work. When we are both worried and anxious, we hold our breath.
Yes.
And we will change our quality of living if we just remember to breathe. So I have all sorts of
yes
breathing pieces that I do too.
It's fascinating. I love it. And I think I've heard you talk about that way of framing it before. I'm really into biohacking, and you can go from a very material perspective through all those things, and I won't go into great detail, but earth, yes, walking and grounding and being in connection with nature, and that also has the wind, the fresh air and all that. Earth, what did you say? Fire, no, a second.
Water.
Yeah, I've got filters galore, and I'm always worrying about I'm always focused on quality of water and
and you're really good about drinking enough water.
Yeah, well, that's what I mostly drink, and I drink rainwater that we catch, and then I filter it through a Berkey filter, which is a very high quality water filter. But I also shower in a shower that has a water filter because I'm sensitive. Well, because of two reasons. I'm sensitive to the chlorine. So if I don't have a shower filter, my skin dries out and I get some skin issues. But also there's heaps of chemicals in that stuff when they treat it. So this is from like a very material perspective. There's that dimension as well. So there's the water and then there's the fire. That one's kind of like so not obvious, but
well, it's also connected to like warm food and hot drinks and
primal is the word I was looking for. It's so primal.
Mhm.
I mean, when I went through men's rites of passage, fire is part of it. What did we do? We sat around a fireplace. People say fire was the original TV. Everyone knows that if you go and sit near a fireplace or a fire outside, your whole body just relaxes. But we forget these things. Well, maybe us who forget we have a body particularly forget these things. And what was the last one? Earth, fire, air. Oh yeah, I have air filters. I don't have it going now because we're recording, but I often have an air filter going. Or I'll have purification, essential oils being diffused to purify the air, and have air filter in the house. And, so I love it. I love the two-dimensional aspect to each of those. There's the material and then there's the more abstract spiritual.
Right.
You can take it as, we need those framings, I think. INFJs, because we don't have that natural structure. Whoa, now I'm using my head. Natural structure in our brain to systematize, like the perceivers can, I think, more easily organize stuff inside of their own mind in an orderly way. Whereas for me, you give me a little acronym or a little framework and it's something to hang these things on. Which is what I'm hearing from you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So where do we want to go from here? I think we've covered a lot of the ground I wanted to cover. Have we covered a lot of the ground you wanted to cover?
Yeah. I'm looking at some of the notes that I kind of entered in with. I think the one piece that I want to be sure and give a little extra attention to is that there's INFJ living, which can kind of have its own quirky pain points.
Yep.
And, sort of melancholy ways just on its own.
Yes.
But INFJ in trauma or INFJ under the pressure of worry and anxiety kind of can become this exponential thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there's this really beautiful piece. We talk a lot about the NITI loop in INFJ circles. There's a lot about that NITI or the cognitive loop, right?
Yeah.
And it's because what's happening in our internal spaces.
Yes.
And it can pull us off track. It really can. But I think that the balancing force and the beautiful thing to remember when you're contending with anxiety, trauma, and worry is how amazing the FESE piece is.
Yeah.
I think we tend to want to back away from the outside world because we're spinning and it seems like the outside world is going to be painful.
Yes.
But the outside world, when we include our body and we include some of these really beautiful self-care pieces, it makes the outside world not so offensive. And we have to remember that it's what we bring to the world that's so beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. On our terms, in a healthy way, not in a reactive way. I mean, I've said before that, through the training with Personality Hacker, the encouragement is to grow and develop the co-pilot, the extroverted feeling piece. And so I've always focused on that as advice. But I think working in people industries, I've realized my whole professional life, I've realized that I have grown that. And what's actually been the most profound is realizing who the heck this extroverted sensing person is right there in the back. And I've already spoken to this, but, giving myself permission to eat a nice piece of raw dessert, spending the money on raw dessert. So it is healthy, but it's also really yummy. Profound, so small, but so profound. Giving myself permission to, or intentionally pursuing, little engagements with extroverted sensing throughout the day. I mean, a shift at work is so much more enjoyable for me if I bring a nice drink with me to have while I'm at work, or a block of dark chocolate, or so on and so forth. I mean, I can go on all day about it because I've found so many of those things now. But yes, I agree with you. We don't hear much about that we don't probably talk enough about it. It's not just that we don't hear about it. We don't talk about it because we forget about it, because it's our blind spot, our weakness.
Well, in a natural trauma response, a natural response to anxiety is to sort of, again, I used the word fracture, and I don't mean that in the way that a clinician would say fracture.
Sure,
but I mean that we withdraw, we pull away.
Yes.
Because
it's a flight response.
Absolutely. Our brain is an amazing pattern making machine, and also our brain has a bias toward negative input.
Negative.
Toward noticing negative input.
It's sticky. It's negative.
It is very sticky because that's what primally keeps us alive. So when we encounter these pain points, right, our brain is like, stay away, stay away, stay away.
Yes.
And so we have this idea that the outside world is going to be painful.
Yes.
And actually, it's lovely. It's where our genius lives, and we need to get out there. There's this exquisite capacity for being fulfilled and for making offerings that is out there in the world.
Yeah.
And so one of the things you hear said to INFJs is, remember that you are part of the collective.
Yes.
So, because we're so aware of the collective and so willing to serve the collective, remember that you're part of the collective. Well, the way that you remember that you're part of the collective is to remember that you have a body.
Yeah.
And that it's so simple, but it brings you into fullness. It fills up your well, and all of a sudden you are able to connect. All the other cognitive functions can come together and do their thing. And because you are in your body, you can actually manifest, offer, not burn out, because you're aware.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, hard won, right?
Yeah. And so here we are. We might be sitting down and we might be using a lot of introverted mechanisms, but we are out right here, right now. Let's pat ourselves on the back and say we're doing something. We're putting an offering out. And,
right, we are, and it's out in the world.
Yes. So I don't know what I'm trying to say, but other than just, I feel happy that I'm doing that, and I think that a lot of people don't realize how hard it is. And this is not an INFJ exclusive thing, but how hard it is for certain people to actually do stuff. A lot of thinking people just think, and don't actually do. And so I'm encouraged, and I want to encourage you more to keep doing that for our benefit. We need more of your genius offerings in our life in our world, from a life of, navigating this stuff and working out how to give offerings while still keeping our balance and our equilibrium.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for creating the space, right?
No worries.
Because here we are again, like the literal physical space was created, and that's really what we need in order for manifestation to happen.
Yes.
It's not just theory.
Yes.
But the, even the microphone discussions and all of that kind of stuff, right? It's all in the physical realm, and it's easy to not want to be bothered by it.
Or be overwhelmed by it.
Oh yeah, I have this. It's a tool that I use with my clients, and I'm happy to share. We can link it. It's a PDF that I've created. It's a circle, and you'll see, because we'll include it. But one half of the circle is kind of your interior terrain, and the other half of the circle is the outside world. So, pieces of data come in, whether it's feedback from a colleague or, something that happens at home, whatever, something you read, it inputs, and then you chew on it, and then you self-manage whatever. And then you have an opportunity to cross the bridge over into your exterior world and engage with the exterior world, eventually become a leader, make an offering, and then hopefully you circle back and you get new data, and you put new data into the machine, and you're constantly moving back and forth between your interior terrain and your exterior world. What happens is we can loop, and we can stay stuck.
Yeah.
And we have a propensity, right?
No, not me.
Stuck. Not you. Not you. I have a propensity to get stuck in that interior terrain. Well, what happens there is you can have a guru, someone with wisdom, who has no influence. So you got a guru with no influence if you stay stuck in that like, oh, you are so self-aware, you've done your work, you're spiritual. But if you never cross over the bridge into the exterior world, what do you have? Right.
And we got plenty that are the other, obviously. Oh, that's what you're just about to say.
And then that's exactly there's another loop too. There's an exterior loop, and those people are leaders and influencers with no self-awareness.
Yeah.
And we have those too. And what we want to be we need all sorts of people. And there are ways that you cross the bridge to the exterior world, and there are ways that you cross over into the interior terrain, right? It's why we need each other. Because some of us are more comfortable in those interior terrains. And some of us are more comfortable out there in that exterior world. I will be super honest with you. In response to what has happened in our current world, and I know that this doesn't have to be contextual to what's going on in the world, because these topics are topics that can be, outside of time space.
Yes.
But we have just been through this series of events that have kind of upped the ante on anxiety and worry. And I had this like huge just urgency to get pieces of my work out into the world in a different way.
Yes.
And honestly, I reached to people in my world. I have a really great INFJ friend, and my husband is an ENTJ.
Yeah.
And there was a tremendous amount of support from the two of them that allowed me to get a body of my work out into the world. So it is within us, right? Like me reaching for my exterior or my exterior world.
Yes.
It's me reaching for my my extroverted functions.
Yes.
But also within my community, it's me reaching for the humans in my space that function well in that space.
Yes.
And it's us supporting each other, because
Yes.
I invite them into their interior terrain in really profound ways too. It's both.
Yeah.
It's both, and
yeah.
it exists on an individual level, and it exists within the collective too.
Yes. And I'm here doing this because a friend of mine said, a couple of small comments, and now is the time. Maybe I'm going to pursue more blah 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 blah. And he said, for you, meaning me, now's the time. You can your message. You've done the work. You've done the development. Now's the time to share it. And I thought, all right, I'm getting Betsy. Once we had that conversation, I thought, right, this is the time to actually do it. We've talked before. We've just not recorded it. Well, essentially what we've done today is recorded what we do anyway.
It's true. And just by like putting these microphones in place and crossing over the bridge and putting it out into the exterior world, it's a stretch for both of us.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we talked about that beforehand. This is a stretch for both of us, but also something that we're willing to do because we are passionate about the collective.
Yes.
And we've done work to make sure that our well is full.
Yes, that's right. Passionate about the collective while keeping the well full. Well, let's put this out and let's see what happens, and then let's loop it back around and we can do it again. Well, thanks so much. It's been beyond my expectations having you on, which I also would say I'm not surprised, which is a bit of a contradiction. But it's been really fun, and I'm so glad this worked out.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm happy to be here, and thank you so much for opening up the space.